on Haps, Facebook Live, Twitter, YouTube's and Periscope and Nydia social media company. I'm your host Dane Thompson from the 3 Point Conversion, as well as plenty of other sites, including the show Beyond the Buzzer. So this is something brand new, doing something I've not done before. So it's kind of, I guess, the test run, trial run of this aspect. So for the next few minutes or so, we're going to talk everything NBA draft from last night. So if you are checking in live, by all means, please let me know what you hear. I'm still trying to get this whole setup set together. So big shouts to everybody at Haps for allowing this to happen. So if you are listening on the Haps app, by the way, download it. It's a great app, not just for myself, but it's many of media members across the country doing more than just sports. It's everything from entertainment, news, as well as some of the top things across the country. So big shouts to everybody else. Also, big shouts to 3 Point Conversion. As you can see on the shirt right here, that says that's the website right for it on 3pointconversion.com. If you go right now, the sites might be a little bit down right now, but it'll be back up sometime tomorrow. Big shouts to everybody in the chat room. My main man, JG, checking in. Yeah, looking dapper in the black shirt. You guys make it look right. You gotta make it look right in day one. And also big shouts to my main man Pablo, who's up in LA. He's one of the big the creators of the Haps app, one of the people that is great journalist as well too. So also at the same time, I said download the Haps app to get myself and plenty of other media journalists as well too. And you also can donate as well too. All right, so what you're really here for is not to hear me in this black shirt, but you're here to talk about the NBA draft. So by all means, if you are watching, let's talk about the NBA draft. And I'm going to go team by team. Most times you can start with just talking about who went where. But the thing is, sometimes you forget about certain teams in the draft. So let's start at the very top of the list. Let's start with the team who had the number 1 overall pick. And we're going to go from top to bottom in the opening round. It was the Minnesota Timberwolves, the team that won the NBA lottery, a team that has D'Angelo Russell and Karl-Anthony Towns, and they had the number 1 overall pick. And what they did with the first pick was they went and got Georgia guard Anthony Edwards. It was pretty much the draft pick that was the smart pick. And when I say the draft pick, that's the smart pick because it does a bunch of different ways. Anthony Edwards is arguably the most talented player in this draft, and he fits the Timberwolves in the right way. What you'll hear me say throughout this entire show tonight is the fact that the Timberwolves, the teams in the top 3, Minnesota, Golden State, and Charlotte, all really what they did in the draft was they got the players that fit the system the best. Anthony Edwards comes right in, could come right at the shooting guard position, right next to D'Angelo Russell. At the same time, you have Karl-Anthony Towns in the middle. And the other 2 players, James Wiseman and LaMelo Ball, really didn't fit the timeline or actually fit the offense that the Timberwolves want to run. They still want to bring back Malik Beasley. They still have, a little bit of holes in the power forward position, but they'll figure that out later. They also traded Ricky Rubio. They also traded for Ricky Rubio later on the night and also acquired James Johnson as well too. Mike Patton in the chat says, Minnesota needs to praise Jesus that all works out. Listen, it couldn't get any worse. Now, the real team that had the most interesting part of the first round was the Golden State Warriors. A couple hours before the draft, well, it didn't go well for Golden State fans. The injury to Klay Thompson is now serious. It's an Achilles injury. He's going to miss the entire 2021 season. Speedy recovery to Klay because it couldn't happen to a worse guy. Klay's a great guy. He is probably one of the reasons why the Warriors were so good over the last few years. You talk about Steph Curry and you see how Klay Thompson and Steph Curry work together. Now the Warriors are in scramble mode again. But the real thing with the Warriors is that if you look how the roster is shaped now with adding James Wiseman, in their championship years with James Wiseman, what made Wiseman so – what James Wiseman adds to the Warriors they didn't have in the championship years is interior presence. Andrew Bogut was able to play defense because of the fact that the Splash Bros were able to splash over the court. But Bogut wasn't the same Andrew Bogut that you saw out in Milwaukee that was actually scoring 15, 16 points a game. Big shouts to Mike Patton in the chat as well, too. I'm still getting used to posting chats and everything else. So at the same time, by all means, comment away. But they added James Wiseman, big center at the top. And what James Wiseman can do is he provides not only rim protection, but he can score. Draymond Green doesn't have to play the 5 all the time. And with Andrew Wiggins, who's coming into his own as well, it makes things a little bit easier for Wiseman. Now, with the gaping hole with Klay Thompson, they added Kelly Oubre earlier today in a trade with the Oklahoma City Thunder, which seems like that's what all the thing they have been doing since Thursday is trade since Friday and Monday of last week is just trading everything. When you see what is able and what's offered with the Warriors, James Wiseman's the perfect fit. I love the Wiseman pick at number two, and you go down to Charlotte at 3. Listen, Charlotte has had so much buzz, literally, in Buzz City. The whole time was Hornets fans, all they wanted to do was do not blow the pick. And guess what? They didn't blow the pick. No matter if you wanted James Wiseman, no matter what you want Anthony Edwards, or no matter where you want LaMelo Ball, they were the top 3 players in the draft, and the Hornets took one of the 3 best players in the draft. No offense to Onyeka Okongwu of the Atlanta Hawks, but LaMelo Ball walks into Charlotte with, to me, the biggest fanfare a draft pick has had in Charlotte since Larry Johnson and Alonzo Mourning. No offense to Baron Davis, no offense to Emeka Okafor, but no one has come in with a bigger name, a bigger brand, and a bigger following than LaMelo Ball since the early part of the 1990s. Charlotte is now not only on the map now, but also people are going to want to see what LaMelo Ball can do. And to be honest with you, if he comes in and plays anything like he did in Australia, now I'm not asking him to come in and average 17, 7, and 7 a game, but if he comes in and provides that same type of excitement, not only does it make the game easier for Terry Rozier and Devontae Graham and guys like PJ Washington and Miles Bridges, but it's going to draw people to say, hey, this kid can play, and I want to play next to him because he's going to get me the ball. The 4th overall pick, now the draft got interesting when it got to 4. Mike Patton asked who's going to be leaving Terry Rozier. From what Mitch Kupchak told us last night, that they're going to make all 3 of them going to work together in some form or some short. And even James Borrego said this is positionless basketball. So when you have positionless basketball in the NBA, it's the 5 best players on the court. Do not be surprised if you see times where PJ Washington is playing the 5. Don't be surprised if you might see Vernon Carey, who they got the 2nd round, play the 5. The Hornets are not going to be playing by position. They're going to be playing to play as an up-tempo style team. So that's what they're looking for. When you go down to 4 in the Chicago Bulls, Patrick Williams, of course, from Charlotte, North Carolina, as you see where I'm located in Charlotte, Patrick Williams was the 4th overall pick. It's kind of ironic and scary at the same time Patrick Williams is 4 to the Chicago Bulls. Patrick Williams played in the system at Florida State where they had multiple guys. You had Devin Vassell, who was another lottery pick, and Leonard Hamilton has surprisingly thrown a lot of lottery picks in the NBA draft over the last couple of years, and he has one with Scotty Barnes on the shelf this year that should be a lottery pick next year in the NBA draft. But here's the thing with Patrick Williams. He's extremely talented. His numbers doesn't prove it. He's a guy that has the small forward frame right now, but he has the frame to grow out and be a power forward. Now, what does that mean for the Bulls? Otto Porter is a free agent, and then you have a guy like Lauri Markkanen, who's also, I think he's a free agent as well, too. Patrick Williams will come in and play both those positions, and he'll figure out the best what he can do. But one thing you'll see about him is that the kid plays hard. He's a tough-nosed kid, and he's not scared. He's fearless. And the Bulls, with a team that needs guys like that, you don't necessarily need a star. And to be honest, Deni Avdija was a very, very good choice here if that would have been the option going with the fourth overall pick, but it didn't happen that way. Patrick Williams is a surprise. I had him at 7 to the Pistons. I thought he would be a nice fit next to Blake Griffin and maybe Blake Griffin's potential replacement later on. But he's going to Chicago at 4, and now you go to Cleveland at 5, and the only pick they had tonight was Isaac Okoro from Auburn. Now, the Cavs also need small forward help because they've spent the last 2 picks on when you had guys like Colin Sexton, and then you had Darius Garland the last 2 years. The front court is already loaded, and I think they might be overloaded at this point. And when I say overloaded, because you already have they acquired Andre Drummond last year. You have Kevin Love. They went out and they still have Larry Nance Jr. on the roster. Tristan Thompson is supposed to be brought back as well, too. They have too many power forwards and bigs on this roster. So with some undersized guards, and you don't know what you really have in Dylan Whittler, and Kevin Porter Jr. is still growing into his game, the small forward position was the hole. Now, Isaac Okoro is a guy that plays both sides of the ball. He plays both sides very, very well. His jump shot is not on. It's not very consistent. Um, I don't want to say it's Michael Kidd Gilchrist-esque when it comes to like coming out of college, but the kid can defend. He's very athletic, and he can play the 2, the 3, and the 4 and defend all the positions in the Eastern Conference. I like the pick there. Who is it? Omar Casper is something. I don't know what he is in the NBA, but he might be gone long enough. All right, talk about 6. 6 is the Atlanta Hawks, and Atlanta took a chance on a guy that, ironically, about 4 hours before we even had the NBA draft, Onyeka Okongwu of USC came out with a foot injury that no one knew about, and it had every team in the top 12 scrambling to get medical reports. The Atlanta Hawks took a chance on him, and guess what? It's the right fit. And I'll tell you why. John Collins is going into a free agent year, and Atlanta struggled with rim protection, and they have struggled with it for a while. No offense to Dwayne Dedmon, but they couldn't guard the rim. Now, in a span of about 7 months, the Atlanta Hawks acquired Clint Capella from the Houston Rockets, who didn't play because of injury, and now you got Onyeka Okongwu, who is already a monster in the paint. And the one thing about Okongwu that is so surprising, Atlanta's in the Big O, is that he's the only player in collegiate history, in collegiate Division I history, per 48 minutes, 20 points, 10 rebounds, over 3.5 blocks, a steal and a half, and a true shooting percentage of over 65. The first player in Division I history, going back to when statistics were put together per 48 minutes, to be able to do all of that. And there have been plenty of bigs that have come out. You question his size at 6'9", but we said the same thing about Bam Adebayo. You ask Onyeka who he watched, and I asked him this, and guys, he talked about his press conference last night, guys he modeled his game after. He said the guy he modeled his game after was, he said Bam Adebayo's a guy, Kevin Garnett's a guy, but he cares about defense. Dikembe Mutombo. He studied these guys in the offseason, and he's been studying them for years. Okongwu loves to block shots and protect the paint. This is a guy that the Hawks need, especially, and I'll be honest with you, going to free agency on Friday, Atlanta has enough, I'm telling you, enough right now to make the playoffs the way they are. Big shouts to my main man Terry Little in the chat on the Facebook side of things, saying what's up. Big up. And the thing is, my man Terry's all the way in Idaho. So you know he can love out in Idaho. Me and Terry go back a long, long time. Mike Patton talks about, Dylan Windler needs to show up. He's time. Well, Cleveland's got plenty of it. They got plenty of time right now to get this right, but it won't be this year for Cleveland fans. Let's talk Detroit at 7. Detroit and new GM Troy Weaver made a lot of moves in the first round. And I know I didn't talk about second-round picks for Minnesota and Golden State and Cleveland. I'll get to them in a minute as well, too. But let's talk about Detroit in their draft. Killian Hayes was the 7th overall pick. Now, Killian Hayes is a point guard. When you think of French point guards, your first thing in your opinion is Tony Parker, or is he Frank Ntilikina? He's somewhere in the middle. He doesn't have Tony Parker's speed, but he's a better jump shooter than Frank Ntilikina. One thing Killian Hayes has that's similar to Ntilikina is that they both play defense very well. Hayes has a little bit more size to him, and the one thing that people saw in France was he could not go to his opposite hand. Now he's worked on to the point where he's gotten better at both hands. At 16, they took Isaiah Stewart, power forward from Washington. He's more of a center, but he's undersized at center, so he'll play a little bit about the 4 and the 5. He's a big body kid that is still streamlining his body together, and he's only 19 years old. Played at Washington, but if you didn't watch really much of the Huskies basketball team last year, you didn't see him. A very, very wide body. Comparison to me, we see Isaiah Stewart was Glenn Davis when he first got in the league. A hustle guy, can still hit the shot from the outside, but can rebound and really box out and use his size very, very well. Saddiq Bey at Villanova at number 19. They acquired in the 3-way trade that sent Luke Kennard to the Clippers, and it sent Landry Shamet to Brooklyn. Saddiq Bey was a guy in college that can play the 3 and the 4, very versatile, hard-working, hard-nosed. And what you realize about this draft tonight, on last night for the Pistons, is that they went out and got guys that play basketball. They got guys that hustle. They have guys that represent what Detroit is like, which is the hard-nosed, gritty type of game. Bey is a little bit more finesse, but it's another Jay Wright first round selection that goes in that round about that 15 to 20 range. That's really, really going to be good. Mikal Bridges, I think, was in the top, outside the top 10 a couple years ago. You had Dante DiVincenzo in Milwaukee for now. And now you have Saddiq Bey, Ryan Diacarciano playing for the Bulls. There's a lot of Villanova guys in the last couple years there in the NBA. Jalen Brunson, they have done really well with players in the NBA. None of them are superstars, but they're guys that play in the rotation. And the Pistons with Sekou Doumbouya, you have they just acquired Dwayne Dedmon yesterday. They have a lot of young guys, and then you have Derrick Rose and Blake Griffin. Not to say the Pistons are going to be a playoff team this year, but they're a team with a lot of youth. Troy Weaver's a very, very good GM. Made a lot of moves and cleared a lot of space so far. My main man Deshaun Tate in the chat. My main man DT to DT. Why was Cole Anthony drafted so low? Listen, I will get to Cole Anthony in a minute. Yes, I will talk about Cole Anthony. Don't worry. There's a little bit more to it. Let's get to 8 overall. The 8th overall pick went to the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks took the hometown kid. Ironically, Obi Toppin was born in Brooklyn, and this was his stage and spotlight. Obi Toppin is the best story in the NBA draft. Okonkwo was a great story. His brother was playing for his brother, wearing his brother's name on the wristbands and everything else in between. But when you look at the story of Obi Toppin, a guy that, number one, wasn't even recruited in high school. He wasn't. He was not recruited by any major Division I teams coming out of high school. He had to sit a year due to academics. No one knew who he was. He's a 23-year-old rookie, and most 22-year-old rookie going on 23, and people knocked him for being a bit older. People knocked him for being an older draft pick. But he was the National Player of the Year in college. Dayton probably would have had a chance to win the national championship if Obi Toppin would have had a chance to play in the tournament. His impact on the game at Dayton was very similar to Kenyon Martin's impact at Cincinnati, when Cincinnati was making that run before he broke his leg and Cincinnati fell apart in the tournament without him. Toppin goes to the Knicks, and if you looked at the Knicks roster about 12 hours ago, you're wondering that the Knicks had 75 power forwards on the roster, and how is this going to work? Now you have a little bit of understanding with Bobby Portis gone, Taj Gibson gone. Julius Randle has 1 year left on his contract. Who knows if Julius Randle will even get out of the doghouse long enough, because he has struggled with defense and their head coach, Tom Thibodeau. I asked Obi Toppin last night during the draft, after he was drafted, who did he see himself being like? And he said he saw a lot of Anthony Davis in this game and wants to be as good defensively as Anthony Davis. But then he also said that everybody compares him to Amari Stoudemire, and guess what? They have the same type of spring. They have the same type of leaping ability. They can dunk the basketball very well. And one thing about Obi Toppin was he didn't dunk till I think he was a senior in high school. And he's dunking like this and hasn't been dunking very long. Emmanuel Quigley was the other pick, combo guard from Kentucky. Will it solve the point guard problem in New York? We'll figure that part out, but Quigley can play the one of the two. Another one of those Kentucky kids that John Calipari has. Ironically, I think no Kentucky player went in the lottery this year, but they somehow send pros everywhere. Quigley will be better in the pros than he was in college because there's so much talent they had around him. Number 9 was a guy I said was good, one of the guys that slid further than I thought, and the Washington Wizards got a kid that could really play the basketball, and that's Deni Avdija, small forward from Israel. Before you say another foreign guy, before you say Luka Doncic, that's not him. But what you will see with Deni Avdija is that he's a very good ball handler. His jump shot needs work, but he has the court vision. He's played long enough to know what kind of talent he is. If you look at him right now, he reminds me of Detlef Schrempf. We're talking Indiana Detlef Schrempf, and even the first couple years of Seattle Detlef Schrempf. A guy that can get to the rim. He's more athletic than you make him out to be. He's very smart. He played on Maccabi Tel Aviv's team at 16 years old. So when you have a guy that's been playing professional basketball at 16, he has experience. He went from a guy being on the bench to the MVP and the youngest MVP of the Israeli league in the history of the league. That's against the grown men's side. Against kids his own age, he dominated, I think, the under-18s for Israel as they won the gold medal. Remember, his Maccabi Tel Aviv team has 4 NBA guys that played on there, including Amari Stoudemire. They know the kid's work ethic, and one thing about him is that he works to get better. Now he's on a team with Washington where he doesn't have to come in and score right away because Bradley Beal averaged over 30 points a game last year. John Wall's healthy. Guess what? You have Deni Avdija. You have Rui Hachimura. If the Washington Wizards would just go out and get DeMarcus Cousins, it would be fun in DC all over again, especially if they can re-sign Davis Bertans. All right, we talk about the 10th overall pick, and this was a surprise pick for me in the first round with the Phoenix Suns taking Maryland's Jalen Smith at power forward. People wonder why Jalen Smith. Well, Aaron Baines is not. They didn't pick up Frank Kaminsky's contract, and Aaron Baines is a free agent, so you have a little bit of space on the front line for the Pistons, for the Suns. One thing about Jalen Smith and how this works is if you go back to college, Jalen Smith, I think his freshman year, played next to another big that has the same size and the same build as DeAndre Ayton and Atlanta Hawks big man Bruno Fernando. They both worked well, and they gave enough space and size to each other. Smith blocks the shots very well. He can also hit the jump shot. I can see now with Chris Paul and the acquisition of Chris Paul can make shots easier for Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith protects the rim and also can do the dirty work that DeAndre Ayton doesn't want to do at times because he wants to play power forward instead of playing center. The Suns are going all in. Chris Paul is the reason why you go in. Mikal Bridges, you have Cam Johnson. The Suns are fun to watch, especially since we now have 10 teams in the Western Conference playoff chases this year. Let's go 11, and the 11th overall pick went to the San Antonio Spurs. All right. The Spurs took another swing guy in Devin Vassell from Florida State, and you're wondering how many more shooting guards and swing guys the Spurs going to have on the roster. You look at DeJounte Murray, Patty Mills, Lonnie Walker III, Brent Forbes, now Devin Vassell. So much versatility on those wings. And guess what? DeMar DeRozan's still on this roster at the same time. Don't expect DeRozan to finish the season. The second pick was Trey Jones of Duke. Listen, he might be the best of the Jones brothers, but when you look at what Trey Jones can bring the Spurs, he's a heady point guard, a pure point guard with a much better jump shot than people let on. And Vassell's a 3-and-D wing. I liked Vassell. Could have been maybe as high as 5 to the Cleveland Cavaliers. But I think it's a Spurs type of fit, Spurs type of player. And I think he'll be fine. He just, in that Spurs team where the team is set right now, it's just so much of the same on the roster. A trade has to happen, especially for DeMar DeRozan and Rudy Gay, to get some of this youth, this experience on the roster and find some more youth in there. 12, the Sacramento Kings is the pick of Tyrese Halliburton, point guard from Iowa State, a guy I thought the Knicks were going to take in the first round. I think a guy Knicks were going to take in the first round at number 8, or even the Pistons at number 7. Here's the thing with Tyrese Halliburton, why the Sacramento Kings took him in the first round. Here's the thing. When you look at what Halliburton brings to the Kings, he's a combo guard. He's listed as a point guard, but he's 6'5". He plays defense, and the one thing about Halliburton is that he hits, I think, right around 40% from the three-point line last season, and he doesn't do anything spectacular. He's not going to blow you away with athleticism, but what he will blow you away is like, man, this guy can play. And on a team that has De'Aaron Fox, on a team that has Buddy Hield, he is a perfect combination guard because at times, if you want to use Fox and Halliburton together, Halliburton can slide to the 2. If you want to use Halliburton and Buddy Hield together, you could put Halliburton at point and have Buddy Hield run the 2. What this means for the Kings and Kings fans is that you're going to lose Bojan Bogdanovic. So my main man, Deshaun Tate, in the chat, if you are watching the show and you want to donate to the show, what you want to do is you see that thing that says subscribe in the corner, go to hapstv.com and then put my name in there. And what happens is if you download the app or go on the website and you sign up through your email address, it's real simple and free to sign up. You get 100 coins. And what you do with those coins is you donate to your favorite journalist. Myself or any of these great journalists on here. My man Mike Patton's on here. Brian Waters, Ashley Baker, some of the best sports and journalist minds, as well as some of the top news folks as well too, getting some of their opinions on some of the top stories and news across the country. So download the Haps TV app at haps.tv if you're on the website, or just go to the Haps app in your app store, the Google Play Store as well too, and download as well too. Deshaun, call me when this is over, and I'll tell you more about it. All right, let's talk about the 13th overall pick in the draft as we go through our draft summary tonight. 13 was the New Orleans Pelicans that drafted at 13 took Kira Lewis Jr., point guard from Alabama, another guy that the Orlando Magic and their fans wanted to see slide down 2 additional picks. But guess what? I will tell you why their pick at 15 might have been the best pick of the draft. All right, so when you look at Kira Lewis Jr., he's a bigger version of Colin. He's what Colin Sexton would have been if you'd been a little bit taller. Aggressive, very strong. can do a little bit of everything. He's not spectacular, but goes to a Pelicans team that, number one, just lost Drew Holiday. But what he does come in and do is he can run the point. He's a little bit better of a point guard than Eric Bledsoe. He can a little bit less than George Hill. He can knock down shots. He's a little bit more athletic. The combo-ness of his guard skills, he's a little bit more of a point guard than the two guard. He fits a Pelicans team with the right timeline, another young, talented player. 14 was the wow, computer froze in that one. 14 ended up being the Boston Celtics. Boston had 3 first-round picks in the first-round draft, and they actually had 3 picks in the beginning of the first-round draft. And let's talk about the 14th pick. The first of their 3 quote-unquote picks is Aaron Nesmith, small forward from Vanderbilt. Listen, the best shooter in the draft by far. I know Jordan Nwora had the best combine when it comes to spot-up shooting and everything else. I think he hit like 80 to 89 out of 100 three-pointers. But Aaron Nesmith was the best shooter in college basketball, hands down, and arguably one of the best shooters I've ever seen in the college game. Why do I say one of the best I've ever seen? Nesmith had an injury last year that ended his entire season. He had I forgot what injury it was he had last year. It ended his entire season. But the one thing about Aaron Nesmith was he hit over 50% of his three-pointers. So what is 50% of his 50%, 52.2% for the three-point size. He is a fire. He fires at all angles, hits all shots at all angles. And one thing about Aaron Nesmith, that he is a scorer. Has this fit with Boston? I have no idea. But you can never go wrong with shooting in the NBA. You can never have enough of it, which is interesting because the pick had to opt out of his contract. The second Boston first-round pick was Peyton Pritchard, point guard from Oregon. Listen, Brad Wanamaker's gone. Peyton Pritchard comes right in. Pritchard, another shooter, another All-American, one of these guys that does so many different things with the basketball in his hands. First-team All-American, shoots the basketball at a high level. I think he's over a 40% three-point shooter. And Yam Madar, a point guard from Israel that got the second round. Well, listen, okay, he's going to be overseas for a while. The Celtics got 2 guys in the rotation because they couldn't trade the picks. It's just that simple. Danny Ainge stockpiles all these picks to try to use them to move up. Doesn't happen. About Cole Anthony, because you asked me about Cole Anthony. Let's talk about Cole Anthony. Cole Anthony was picked number 15 by the Orlando Magic. And what do I feel about Cole Anthony is, listen, I'm a Tar Heels guy when my hat's off. I'm not wearing a media shirt. One thing you'll see about Cole Anthony and you like about Cole Anthony is the fact that Cole Anthony is a dog. Yes, Alex Philliman said it best in the chat. He's a steal. Cole Anthony going into college was a top 5 recruit in the country. Went to North Carolina, and it was built for him to be the guy at North Carolina. He got hurt about 10, 12 games in the season and attempted to come back. What happened when he came back? He wasn't the same player. Gave it everything he had and tried to get Carolina to the tournament, but it just really wasn't working. Now Cole Anthony goes to Orlando Magic, and here's the thing with the Magic's roster. The Magic missed one thing haven't had this, and I can't even tell you the last. It might be going back to Vince Carter, maybe even Tracy McGrady, how long it's been since they've had a guard that is a dog and a guard that goes out there and goes to get it. What happens with Cole Anthony is that he's already angry. He said in his presser last night that he didn't feel like there were 14 other players in this draft better than him. He's a New Yorker. He's already coming in. He gets to the basket. He's not scared. He's fearless at the rim. He gets to the free throw line. At times, his shot can be streaky, but the numbers pretty much balance out. Orlando's been missing a guy to be a dog for a long time. They haven't had one of those. Nothing against Markelle Fultz, but when you have the thoracic injury that he had in the shoulder, a confidence is taken away from him. And it's really his second year. Evan Fournier has best scoring season, I think, of his entire career last year, but he's not, and he's the guy they had in the fourth quarter. The problem with Fournier is that he can shoot the ball, can create a little bit off the dribble, but he's not going to get to the rim. There is no Jonathan Isaac, so he doesn't do it either. Terrence Ross is a flamethrower off the bench, but none of those guys create their own shot. Cole Anthony's a point guard. Cole Anthony's a New Yorker. Cole Anthony has the confidence. If Steve Clifford uses Cole Anthony right, I'm going to say this, and it's 11:46 on, I think, Thursday, November 19th, 2020. If Cole Anthony is used right, he is the dark horse candidate to win Rookie of the Year as of right now. If Cole Anthony plays like the Cole Anthony we saw in high school, Markelle Fultz will either be the sixth man by the time we get to the All-Star break, or they're going to be starting right beside each other. Evan Fournier is coming off the bench. Cole Anthony has star potential, star talent, and guess what? He's good bet. Here's a trivia question. The last Magic, one other Magic player wore 50, and he won Rookie of the Year, I think it was. I think that was Mike Miller. Just saying. 16 in the draft. That pick ended up being through scrolling. The draft belonged to. Hey, it's the first night. It's the first night of Haps. First night of Haps. Everything is going to be a little interesting. 16. Oh, sorry. Detroit picked at 16. 17 ended up being the 16. 17 was the 19 was Brooklyn. 17. All right, the Magic Television guys. 17. Because Oklahoma City had 75 picks in the first round. So leave me alone. All right. Alexei Pokasev from Serbia. All right. What this is a draft and stash. The Thunder picked up so much cap space over the last and picked up so many players the last few days. It's good to throw a draft pick away. They have, I think, 18 draft picks between now and 2026. And there's still Theo Malden should get playing time from day one. He's a guy that's going to be doing a lot of different things. He is another one of these point guards from France. He's a little bit more Krejci, a kid from the Czech Republic. He'll be over there for a while. All right, I think we're back. I think we're having a little bit of connectivity issues. Okay, we're back. Vit Krejci, another guy's going to be overseas. One thing the Thunder did draft was a lot more overseas talent, maybe talent that won't be over in the NBA in the very near future. Pokasev can play right now. I don't think he will play this year, but it'll be interesting to see where he ends up in the future in Oklahoma City, especially when you have guys that are going to be a little bit more of the Thunder's MO right now. They're more of a team that's in a rebuilding mode right now. They're a rebuilding team right now. Talk about this, the second part of the draft. The Dallas Mavericks were at 18, and they took Josh Green from Arizona. Listen, the kid from Australia can jump, he can leap, and guess what? He played Australian rules football, a much needed thing of toughness that the Mavericks needed, especially when you have guys like Luka Doncic on the roster. Josh Green's a guy that can be physical, can get in your face, and like I said, any kid that plays Australian rules football growing up, you got my seal of approval. You play a talented to Arizona team that could have been better at times, struggled at times, but I think we watched Josh Green. He has a bit of an edge to his game, but I think he'll be solid. When they added Josh Richardson last night, have a little bit more versatility. Both guys like to defend and play hard, so I like what they did there at 18. 19, I told you about Saddiq Bey. The trade with him ended up in Detroit. Solid pick for the Pistons. Another guy that's going to be able to make a lot of noise and a lot of and the Pistons were a team that's moving around. I like what he's going to do in Detroit. We're going now to 20 and 20. Like I said, there's been so many draft trades during this process. Philadelphia was 21. 20 was the Miami Heat impresses Achua from Memphis. He was a guy that was the only freshman in NCAA to average a double-double last year, going to a team that he fits next to Bam Adebayo. He's a big guy, can block shots. He was one of the top players in high school. Would have been even better if James Wiseman would have played all season because the attention wouldn't have been on him. But listen, they have a hardworking kid that's very quiet, going to the right situation where he could just grow his game next to a whole bunch of good big guys. And remember, Kelly Olynyk and this team with Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, they have talent there. Udonis Haslem, he's going to the right culture. Philadelphia at 21, Tyrese Maxey. Listen, last night, if you watch the Philadelphia 76ers from the time they traded Al Horford for Danny Green up until the time the draft ended, the Sixers went and got shooting. Sixer fans have been irritated by the fact that Philadelphia couldn't hit an open shot if they were next to the rim all year, especially from deep. Tyrese Maxey was the first thing they got. They traded for Seth Curry. They also got Tyler. They drafted Tyler Bay at one point and got Isaiah Joe. Nothing but shooters everywhere. That's what you need the NBA nowadays in order to be successful. The shot has to fall. The Sixers now have shooters everywhere. Tyrese Maxey, to me, he reminds you of Malik Monk, but I think he might be better than Malik Monk. Zeke Naji is at 22 to the Denver Nuggets. Another athletic big that can block shots, a guy that can move around the court. Very, very good. Kind of a springy type of guy. Reminds you a little bit of Tyson Chandler. Very, very, very athletic. And he's going to take over the role of Miles Plumlee. I think Plumlee's a free agent as well, too. Leandro Barbosa is 23 to the Knicks that got traded down a little bit later. Listen, he's going to be overseas. Don't expect him to do much. He was in the Quigley trade that happened later on with Oklahoma City at 25. 24 was R.J. Hampton that got redirected from Milwaukee to the Denver Nuggets. I'm going to go on record and saying this again. It's the second time I'm going on record. The Denver Nuggets might have the most dangerous trio of young players in the NBA, and I don't think any of them are 20 years old. Michael Porter Jr., Bol, and now R.J. Hampton are going to be a three-headed monster that will be let loose at some point in time next to Jamal Murray and next to your main man, Nikola Jokic down low. All I'm going to say is R.J. Hampton did not have the attention he got in Australia, but this guy can move. He's a good motor, can shoot the basketball. Don't let the numbers in Australia fool you, because guess what? He was an 18-year-old like LaMelo Ball playing against grown men. When you can play against grown men, I even asked Mitch Kupchak about it, it makes you different. Okay, there's nothing against the kids that play college ball, but Mitch Kupchak told a story last night about scouting players then and now. So you have high school kids back in the early part when high schoolers are allowed to enter the NBA draft, and the way Mitch had told us was this. When you look at a high school kid, a kid coming out of high school, and he's dominating guys who are sophomores and freshmen in high school, or even guys on their level, and they're looking not as talented, but they're just dominating. And you wonder, okay, how is this going to translate to the next level? Then you have high school kids that go overseas, and Australia is not some bum league. Australia has a lot of professional guys over there. To me, it's the second best league in the world outside of what goes on in Spain on a regular basis. Australia has a lot of talent out there. For a guy like LaMelo Ball to average 17, 7, and 7 in Australia as an 18-year-old going into 19-year-old is one thing. R.J. Hampton averaged right around 9 points, 4 rebounds, and a couple assists a game over as an 18-year-old. Do you know the transition is to go against people who are 25, 26, 30, 35 years old on a nightly basis? These are grown men. And for you to hold your own against grown men, it works. Terrence Ferguson did it when he was before he was drafted by the Thunder. Going to Australia works. Not sure how the G League is going to work out for the guys that are going to the G League, but Australia has worked. It's 3 for 3 when it comes to high schoolers going over there and coming back great. We talked about Peyton Pritchard at 26. Udoka Azubuike for the Utah Jazz was at 27. Listen, a shot blocking machine that comes off the bench now that can punish you at the rim on both ends, because he's within 5 feet. He's dunking the basketball. He's uber athletic. He blocks shots, and he can move. Now, when Rudy Gobert goes out the game, now you got another guy that's blocking shots everywhere. Back in sort of Tony Bradley got moved to Detroit today, and Abuke has a nice little be the guy behind Rudy Gobert. But just remember, if he gets to be really, really good, Rudy Gobert's a free agent next summer. That's all I'm saying. Jalen McDaniels was a 20th overall pick that was actually the Lakers pick that was moved for Danny Green. Now he's in Oklahoma City. His brother plays for the Charlotte Hornets, same type of build. Jaden has a little bit more role in Oklahoma City, especially with the fact of Kelly Oubre being moved to Golden State earlier today, kind of free playing time for him. And I don't see the Thunder re-signing Danilo Gallinari sometime tomorrow. Malachi Flynn's 29 to the Toronto Raptors. Listen, Kyle Lowry's getting long in the tooth, and you don't know what Fred VanVleet's situation is. But New York, by the way. I think it's a smart fit. It's a guy that's going to take over eventually for Lowry. I think Lowry's 365 years old. But no, he's getting older in the tooth. And even though Kyle Lowry is still, to me, one of the best point guards in the league, a top 30 player in the league, probably in the league right now, he's getting up there. The wear and tear is getting to him, so you got to get some kind of replacement out there soon enough. And at 30, Desmond Bain from is going to the Boston Celtics. That was redirected later on the night. Listen, Desmond Bain's going to Memphis. If that deal goes through, what you're going to have is, guess what? You should have now Memphis, who did shooting last year, has one of the best shooters in the draft. A guy that is a gunner, a guy that's going to be able to play next to Ja Morant, can create his own shot, but guess what? He can shoot the basketball. He has an NBA skill right now, and he's pretty athletic as well too. A little bit, not a two-way player, but a guy that can get in and run next to Ja Morant, run next to Jalen Jackson Jr. and the rest of those young boys and shoot the basketball well, and provide some spacing for Ja Morant so he can dunk on more people this year. Let's go into the second round. Some guys in the second round that you might want to know, names that you might not have heard of, names that you need to know. All right. I mentioned Vernon Carey earlier with the Charlotte Hornets. Listen, one thing about Vernon Carey that you will see differently from when he was at Duke last year, he was all ACC last year, ACC Freshman of the Year. I want to say ACC Player of the Year as well too. Vernon Carey lost 35 pounds. He played at 270. He said himself last night that he was heavy. Now he's a lot lighter on his feet. 240 pounds, and he's trimmed his body fat down. He's going to go into a situation in Charlotte that if they don't sign the center, he has every chance to take the job from Cody Zeller on night one of the season. Vernon Carey might be one of those second round picks. The Hornets have done something with second round picks. If you don't pay attention to the Hornets, now you should. The Hornets have done well in the second round. Vernon Carey could be the next one of those second round picks that can make this roster and actually make a change. Devontae Graham was one. And then you also had the Martin twins. They got Cody Martin they got last year, and Jalen McDaniels, Jaden's bigger older brother, could also make the Hornets rotation. But the Hornets have done well in the second round. And the second round pick, Mike Patton just got the second pick the Hornets had in that round. Kansas. One thing about Nick Richards is he compared himself to when we talked to him today that he said he modeled his game a lot like Tyson Chandler. He blocks shots. He gets to the rim. He likes to rim protect. Charlotte was one of the worst interior defensive teams in the league. Now you have a guy that likes to block shots. If you're saying a guy that could potentially make this roster as well too from the second round, Nick Richards is another one. Charlotte did very well in the second round, and don't worry, that 56th overall pick in Grant Riller, I think he is a second round stud. He should have been taken higher in the second round. Can shoot the basketball, is fearless. In his game, because he went to college at Charleston, there's another 6'3" guard that he reminds me of, and that's CJ McCollum of the Portland Trailblazers. Other teams in the second round that made some really good moves. The Sixers guy, Isaiah Joe, another shooter. Anytime you draft shooting in the NBA, especially when you have Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons on the floor, you need as much shooting as possible. I love the pick there. Cassius Winston at 53, which got redirected to Washington. Listen, Cassius Winston can be what Isaiah Thomas should have been in Washington. A spark plug off the bench, a guy that can shoot the basketball, fearless, and guess what? Was a guy at Michigan State that can do a lot of the things that you want him to do. I think he's a better version of Carson Edwards, who was drafted by the Celtics the year before. Expect Cassius Winston, if he get a chance with a kind of shortened training camp, to actually get into Washington and could take some minutes from John Wall as he recovers from both of his injuries from last season. The Wiz kids. Yeah, when you have Michigan State always does well, especially with another guy, Xavier Tillman Sr., who was drafted 35 to the Sacramento Kings. Tillman, a guy Magic Johnson said might be the hardest working guys you see, is a dog. A guy that's not afraid to block shots, a guy afraid to do little things, take the paint. When people look at him and you look at Michigan State basketball over the years, it's Draymond Green. Draymond Green. He brings those type of intangibles to the game. One name that you might know, Jahmi'us Ramsey, taken at 43. Ramsey should have been a first-round pick if he would have went back to school for one more year. Listen, Jahmi'us Ramsey's kind of when you look at Jahmi'us Ramsey, people might think of Zaire Smith when he was at Texas Tech. I don't see that. I think he's a little bit more athletic. I think he's a little bit more further along than Jarrett Culver. It's just that timing was just the wrong thing. I think he should have stayed another year in school. Jahmi'us Ramsey could be a guy that, if he is a given opportunity, can come in and make some plays. Leslie Stokes, my main man, Leslie out in Orlando, who was the steal of the first round. So let's give grades. All right. The team They had, to me, 4 players. All of their draft picks were the top 45 on my list, my top 50. They all got